The Florida Gators have the potential to have an absolutely stacked class at safety for the 2025 class.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever in the podcast and on YouTube. I am Brandon Olsen. Joining me is Brian Smith, Locked On's recruiting insider. And before we get started, I'd like to thank LinkedIn Jobs for being the official college football recruiting sponsor across the Locked On College Network. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. And Brian, long time no see. But yesterday, we talked about if Florida wins some games, you got a decent shot at getting some of these commitments because, summer's gone slow so far commitment-wise. You mentioned Florida shouldn't have 5 kids committed in the middle of June, which is funny because Florida had 4 in late March, early April. And I remember asking you, should we be worried? And you're like, oh, right now you're at a fine spot. But, you want to add a few in the next couple months.
And then they haven't.
Yeah, and then they didn't. But there's one specific player that I think Florida, if you win even that first Miami game, I think you can generate a lot of momentum with that one. But if you win the first few games of the season, or you start off 3-1, 4-0, which is realistic, I think, at least considering most of those games are home, you should be favored in, I think, 3 of them. The Miami one, you're not going to be. You aren't right now. You're 3.5-point underdogs. But Hilton Stubbs, currently committed to USC, had a blast on a visit this past weekend. He had his official visit to Florida this past weekend. And, I mean, they're full court pressing here. We saw USC lose a commit already on Tuesday morning, if I'm not mistaken. How do you view this playing out? Let's say Florida starts 3-1. Is it realistic for me to go, all right, I think that you got a pretty good shot with convincing Hilton Stubbs to stay in-state?
I think you could apply that to a lot of kids. They want to see how that Miami game goes and others. They want to see the chemistry. Are they making coaching gaffes again? Is there any letdown? Are they going to have a game like they did against Kentucky? They need those things to go away, and they're not going to get any credit until they play. There's nothing Napier and his staff can do about that. I think they can get about anybody. I've said it 100 times. It's a top 5 job in college football. It's not a hard job, but people aren't going to go somewhere to go 6-6. Do you blame? You know what I mean? Like Stubbs can go wherever he wants. He's a great player. So, Solomon Thomas and all these other guys. You really got to convince if they're going to flip. That starts with winning games in September. So we'll see.
Yeah, I do feel like Florida, you can generate a ton of momentum, just win a couple games. Especially Hilton Stubbs is at Mandarin in Jacksonville, if I'm not mistaken there. You can get him up for an unofficial for that game. Like that Miami game, if you're an unofficial visitor or official visitor and you're even truly considering Florida, and correct me if I'm wrong or if I'm overstating this, but Florida, Miami go at it for a lot of recruits right now.
They absolutely do.
They go out for a lot of recruits. You can get them on campus in Gainesville. If you can beat Miami, the atmosphere that should be going around there, it's going to be electric. Like genuinely, when I just talk about the atmosphere there,
oh, yeah.
I get goosebumps. I'm stoked for the game. Like Utah 2022 is the wildest atmosphere I've ever been in. And I feel like this game is going to be just a different level compared to that. So I feel like you can genuinely, just winning the Miami game, get some of that, like that sugar rush of that kids can have from that atmosphere. I feel like you can do something with a kid just in that game alone.
It's amazing what one in-state rivalry game can do, especially when that rivalry game isn't always played. Like Florida State play every year. The Miami-Florida thing has been goofy. They used to play a long time ago every year. They haven't since the 80s, Spurrier didn't want to play it. So if you want to yell at Spurrier for something, he's the one that screwed that up. But whatever. They're playing this year, and it's the first game of the year. They're not dodging each other. Both teams have coaches that there's some question marks. I mean, Cristobal's 12-13. I mean, it's not exactly murdering it down there in Coral Gables. So they both need it. They're going to have everybody in the world going to watch that game. It's one of the biggest games of the weekend. The Georgia-Clemson game's probably the biggest. I get that. But outside of that, this game's going to be right there as far as national interest. So they're going to have a gazillion recruits there. Kids are going to watch it on TV. You got a chance to change your recruitment with numerous players. People don't underestimate Florida's ability to recruit if people believe in the power, because the Swamp is a very special place.
Yeah, one of my favorite things about Florida and Miami playing week 1 is just both fan bases. First off, they hate each other. I'm in Twitter spaces
100%.
a lot, and there's just, you can hear me. I don't curse on this show. You can hear me drop F-bombs incessantly at Miami fans in there. I just want to throw that one out there. But both fan bases are also, right now at least, riding pretty high on their programs, which just means that week 1, there's going to be millions of people just devastated. That's my favorite part about it. Just the drop off from both sides talking an atrocious level of trash. Someone's going to be just heartbroken there. But Florida also this past weekend had Lagonza Hayward on campus. They had a lot of safeties on campus this weekend. We're going to talk about all of them. Lagonza Hayward was on campus this weekend. And after the visit, he said, Florida's my new leader. So I was thinking going into this weekend that it was Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee, Florida. Florida, after a big weekend, took the lead. He said that they're the new leaders. He's already visited Georgia and South Carolina officially, if I'm not mistaken. It's just Tennessee. Now, what's the challenge for Florida as the leaders? You've got just Tennessee coming up. He's already taken the OVs to South Carolina and Georgia, so no more official visits to them. Obviously, he could still unofficially visit. But what's the challenge now being the leaders with a month and a week until his commitment date? Because he's committing on July 27th.
He's an in-state kid for UGA. Never count out Kirby. We've talked about that many times. And second, Tennessee's a great visit. It's a neat school, great campus and all that. I know that's not exactly Florida's favorite fan base either, and they got a ton of NIL. So I'm curious how that works. I don't know if they've prioritized him like UF. I don't know. Do not count out Tennessee with that. They got a big wallet. So with the visit and everything, that their tradition and fan base, they're a team too. There are a lot of things that are going to happen between now and his commitment date. I'm curious to see if Hayward shifts at all. If he says, oh, Tennessee made it right, like, is he a kid that changes his tune based on every visit? Tennessee visit's going to be cool. I guarantee it. They'll spend all the money on it. They'll have stay in a luxury suite, the whole 9 yards. I'm curious what he thinks.
Yeah. Tennessee's, look, I mean, we know the NIL stuff. When they got Nico, that was a big thing. It's just like, oh yeah, they're giving him a ton of money. And hey, we'll see how they can do it. They've been players in the portal as well. The last safety to talk about that was on campus this weekend is Bryce Fitzgerald. He said that he's got Florida and FSU at the top of his list, with LSU and Miami also in the top 4. I don't think any of that was in order. It was just Florida and FSU are the top 2. LSU and Miami round out the 4, not necessarily in that order. But he's got his Miami official visit this coming weekend. He's from Columbus in Miami, if I'm not mistaken there. How do you think this one plays out for Bryce Fitzgerald?
This is wild because I always just thought he was going to go to UM. He's from Columbus. That's the same high school as Alex Mirabal, the Miami O-line coach, and his best friend by the name of Mario Cristobal. They prioritized that program, and they recruited him heavy early on. For whatever reason, I thought he'd be one of their first commits. It hasn't happened. So that makes it foggy for me. Florida State, they've got obviously a great DB room. Sertan being the DB coach. I mean, they got a pretty easy gig there. And then UF needs guys to make an impact because they weren't exactly covering anybody last year. So playing times at UF, this is wild. I have no idea. And at one point I thought this is an easy one. I didn't even follow it that close. Then I see all these visits. I'm like, okay, I missed this one by a mile. I don't know what's going on. Is he a take right now in Miami? Because I really thought that's where he was going to go. This is bizarre to me, but maybe UF is a team that gets a steal here. I mean, Will Harris is a good coach. I don't know, man. You tell me.
Hey, I'll take him. If he's willing to come here, I will gladly take him.
Oh, he's good too. He's legit.
So, yeah, I've been watching him after the last time we talked, and I was like, okay, I'm on board. I'm on
absolutely.
Here.
You should be. He can play receiver, safety, nickel. He's a good player.
Yeah, I would like to ask, do you think any of the three safeties that we just talked about can play corner as a full-time thing, even if it's in the nickel?
Nickel is just depend on how you use your scheme. Like, are you really going to use him in coverage a ton, or are you going to play him more as a blitzer and run support guy? But I think Fitzgerald probably could play nickel. He's so smart. That is a big part of it. I don't know the Hayward kid. He's ranked higher. I don't know him. So I'm not going to comment. But those things are weird. Any safety that can play corner, outside of like DJ Pickett, who's not human, is rare. Because when I say play corner, I mean, can you play man? Cover 3, a million players can play. Can you line up in front of somebody, face mask to face mask, backpedal, turn, and run? Checkbox. It is a small number, bro. I don't want Fitzgerald even playing corner because I think his body will outgrow it. But at the same time, it wouldn't shock me if he could do it in at least a cover 3 scenario. If not, some cover 2 or what have you.
Today's episode of Locked On Gators is brought to you by eBay Motors. With passion, drive, and patience, that's the formula for winning championships, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance with superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your parts guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. So the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. And eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. I am Brandon Olsen. Joining me, Brian Smith, Locked On's recruiting insider. We talked about safeties. We're sticking in the secondary. We're going to talk about some corners. Florida's made a strong push lately with legacy corner Ben Hanks Jr., his dad, of course. Don't get me wrong, Ben Hanks Sr. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that Ben Hanks Jr.'s dad was Ben Hanks Sr., linebacker for the Florida Gators in the early to mid 90s. They've been going all out when Ben Hanks Jr. was on campus, and they had Ben Hanks Sr. there as well. What else do you think they could do for themselves since he plans on committing before the summer? We have quite a few kids who've said, hey, we plan on committing before the summer, before the season starts. So at least for the initial commitment, you can't even say, go out there and win some football games.
I just think it's familiarity, family, and the opportunity to be a legacy at a program like UF's kind of cool. I don't think it's really more complicated than that. UF's a pretty easy sell, as I say on this show a lot. But your dad was somebody that people, like I remember his dad. If I remember right, he wore number 11, if I remember correctly. But that's a player that meant something because that's when Florida took charge and was a national program. They were top 5 every year and all that. I highly doubt that Senior has not told him about that. Going to go out on a limb and guess that there are a few helmets and plaques around the office and all that kind of stuff that his son has seen. Now the question is, how good's a relationship? I don't know. I don't know. But Florida also needs defensive help. If they want to go that route, they can sell the playing time, help us get over the hump. He's a guy that can play probably safety or corner. He's really lanky, really athletic. I think he can play either spot. I don't think it would matter. The other part of it is he's also got a lot of major offers. You're not just talking about somebody that's good because it's a legacy. Just to be clear, he's got offers from a ton of schools. He's a really good football player. So Florida State and a bunch of other schools are interested. This is a kid. UF if they're going to get back over the hump, they can't lose these kids. That's the other way to look at this. You can't lose your legacy kids. You just can't. So good football players in the secondary, UF definitely needs them.
Yeah, I'm curious with the legacy kids because I mean, we talk about this all the time with Florida. I mean, a bunch of Florida greats like Ben Hanks Sr. They have kids now. Vernell Brown Jr. has Vernell Brown III as well. We see every year there's legacy kids that Florida's recruiting. And I feel like the success rate with landing them isn't that high. And people, I think, try to take it out on Florida. But I also feel like it's just a change in the times right now. And this is a relatively boomer take of mine here. But I feel like legacy kids nowadays are just like, I want to go do something else. And so are we getting to a point where legacy might not be a great thing to go, oh, like you got to land the legacy kids, which I agree with you. But I feel like today's kids might just be like, well, I want to go do something else.
Yeah, it's true. There are certain schools that get more of them than others. Why? I don't know. Maybe they're prioritized because teams want the NFL pedigree and stuff. I'm not sure. But you're right. There are kids that have went to numerous schools all across the country, and you look through the rankings of a recruiting class, and somebody's got 3 of those kids that none of them went to that school like their dad. So I don't know why that is. It is an interesting study. So I don't know. But again, in-state kid, your dad's not just a player at Florida. He was a legendary player at Florida, and you need help in the secondary. If that's not priority, I'm not really sure, Brandon, how we would say it. Hanks is important to Florida on multiple levels. They need to sign that kid.
Yeah, he is very much a priority for this coaching staff right now. And Florida doesn't have many committable offers out there right now at cornerback. DJ Pickett very much has a committable offer. You talked about him last segment. You may know he's not human. You talked about Ben Hanks Jr. Oh, he's really lanky. DJ Pickett's lankier than that, I think, at this point. And DJ Pickett, still an elite corner. His dad said, hey, we're going to try to set up an official visit to Florida. Hasn't happened yet, so I'm going to assume that it's going to be an in-season visit if it happens at all. What's the latest with DJ Pickett as far as you know?
Miami is the team that's trending the most recently. He just visited there. This has been all over the place, to put it mildly. His cousin just signed with the Canes, Booker. Booker's younger brother is a team that Miami's recruiting. He's got family ties to the school in general. And, of course, I mean, how many 6'4" corners do you hang out with, Brandon? Exactly. And that's why he's got pretty much wherever he wants to go. Oregon and LSU and Georgia are the other schools. But UF and Florida State haven't given up either. They're just trying to get him on campus this fall. We'll see.
Yeah, I think as far as how many 6'4" corners I've ever even met, Tariq Woolen.
I haven't met any besides DJ.
Yeah, Tariq Woolen, I only met him because of the Senior Bowl, and he was a nobody when I met him. So, yeah, I think it's just Tariq Woolen at this point. Florida added recently Cormani McLean as a preferred walk-on with the potential to earn a scholarship if he does right this season. One of the top corners in the 2023 class. Played enough as a true freshman to burn that red shirt with Colorado coming off the bench rotationally. Jameer Grimsley, also another recent addition for the Florida Gators, although he added during the first transfer portal window after Nick Saban retired. And Jameer Grimsley was very open about it leading up to his commitment, where he was just like, I want to go to Florida. I want to go to Alabama. I have no idea what's going to go on with Florida's coaching staff if they have another year like they had in 2023. We talked about this with quarterbacks yesterday. How important do you feel it is for Florida to land a top cornerback in the 2025 cycle after landing, again, two of the top corners in their respective classes of the past 2 years?
You need corners every year now. You need to sign 3 corners in every class because of how college football is played. That's first. Everybody runs spread. Second of all, I don't care who Florida signed. I watched Florida's DBs last year. You did too. We've had some conversations we can't repeat on this show about your thoughts about how they played last year. But rightfully so. I mean, they were bad. You got to take as many good players as you can until it gets fixed. I mean, they had a bunch of 4 and 5-star recruits over the last 5 years, and how many great secondaries did they have? Yeah. I mean, Jason Marshall, I thought was the best corner in the country coming out of high school. He was bad last year. They got to take as many good guys as they can. I think they need minimum 2 that are really, really good. I'm not real warm and fuzzy about UF's corner recruiting. They got a short board. I know they're recruiting some lengthy kids, but it's a weird approach they're taking.
It feels like how they approach offensive line. If they go, hey, we want you to have the physical measurements, and we're just going to bank on ourselves developing you. Hey, the bad man, Corey Raymond, is gone. So, which is a wild thing to say considering he's Corey Raymond, but that dude was checked out. It was like he was working a 9 to 5. He was very checked out there. One area that wasn't checked out was Jay Bateman, although he did check out the day after signing day, which caused a bit of a stir with Florida Gators. Yeah, that one was a doozy. But the Florida Gators looking at a lot of linebackers in the 2025 class. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free reviews in the podcast. I am Brandon Olsen. Joining me is Brian Smith, Locked On's recruiting insider. And I know you guys hate to hear me say this, but I promise you it's relevant. The host of Locked On Seminoles here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Linebackers, name of the game here. And Florida had a stellar linebacker class last year with Miles Graham, Aaron Childs. For a while, they had Adarius Hayes, the next Ray Lewis, committed. And, of course, he ended up flipping to Miami. That one was just a messy situation where and this is my stance on the Adarius Hayes stuff. I think that one, and I said this while he was committed to Florida, better suited off playing the edge. And 2, towards the end of that recruitment, Miami was very much pacing to flip him, even if Florida wanted to keep him, and Florida just got fed up with the antics, and they were like, all right, then just go. We don't want you here anymore. But it's not a spin. He was going anyway. I firmly believe that. But different school for you to talk about here with Florida State and Florida. Where do you think the Florida Gators stand, or what do you think the Florida Gators have to do to land Tavion Wallace, who, again, I've said, I think he's my favorite linebacker in the class. Florida took the lead this past weekend for him, reportedly. Took the lead for him this past weekend after his official visit to Gainesville. However, he's got a July 2nd commitment date, and before that, he's got a Florida State visit officially this weekend.
Yeah, Florida State has a massive recruiting weekend on the
22
21st.
kids. 22 kids. I looked at it this morning. 22 kids. That's nuts.
I bet it ends up being higher. The Florida State shows will be at a higher number next week because of all the commitments they're going to get. Remember I said that. But here's the deal. Florida did a great job with the relationship building with this kid. It's not like their defense was dominant last year. They had some stretches of games. They looked good. They played good against Florida State for part of the time. The relationship part is there. Now does he buy into what their vision is? I have no idea. I don't know the kid. But if they are even close to the trending team out of nowhere, because he's a heavily recruited player, go to a lot of schools. He's really, really good. Florida might have a little more oomph than some people like myself may have given him credit for. Because, again, they got like 5 commitments or whatever. I need to see them finalize, but Florida State needs to hit this one out of the park. That's a school that he likes a lot too, and it's not uncommon for one of these county school kids to end up at Florida State. That's been going on my entire life. But Florida's coming after him hard. I'm really curious to see how that visit goes to Florida State. And can Florida come back after the visit to Tallahassee's done and say, hey, don't forget about us. You had a great visit here. Here's what we still sell. He probably has as good or better chance to play at Florida early than Florida State. Neither one's necessarily loaded at linebacker, but Florida State's gotten some good players. I'm curious. This might come down to the 2 schools. This might be a comfort kind of deal. Like, which staff is he more comfortable with? So he's not far from either school. it's interesting.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like I know Georgia's still in it, and we're never gonna count out Kirby, and I know that
I don't even need to say that anymore. It's just it's redundant.
Yeah, and Arkansas's got the relationship because Arkansas linebacker coach recruited his brother to
Right.
Kentucky, and so they've got that. But this, to me, just feels like Florida State. I said I think Florida
Wouldn't be
State will
surprised.
ultimately land them, but I'm also hoping that, I said you got 22 kids visiting, and you're like, I think it'll end up higher. I'm hoping that they just don't give enough attention to him, and I know that's not going to happen. But I'm just hoping that he's like, you know what? Could have did more for me there. Another player that Florida got on campus this past weekend, and he actually canceled his Florida State visit to go do it, was linebacker Ty Jackson. Florida got in relatively late here, or not even that they got in relatively late, but the momentum seemingly came out of nowhere to get him on campus. It really wasn't a thing that we were expecting. We didn't even talk about him until that got set up because it felt like Florida was far behind here, but they built a little bit of momentum. To my knowledge, I don't think he has a commitment date set yet. To me, I feel like this says the longer this drags out, the better it is for Florida to continue making up ground here. Do you think this is going to be a recruitment that gets an answer anytime soon?
No. Flat out. He's a kid that keeps it close to the vest, South Florida player, and he's got a plethora of offers. Something tells me this is an October, November kind of deal at the earliest. I know fans don't like hearing that, but if he commits, I wouldn't put much stock in it based on what I've heard because he's just got legitimate offers. Florida State's, Miami's, and Florida's coming or one thing, but he's got a ton of out-of-state NC, like SEC offers. He'd go to Georgia or Tennessee or whatever he wanted. This special football player. So now the real question is, how do you pace yourself and which game do you try to bring him to for an unofficial if you're UF or Florida State? Because it could come down to, he might be in Tallahassee for a certain game at the end of the year. It's one that you're probably interested in, Brandon. So this is a long haul recruitment for a kid. When you watch his film, it's like, holy moly, he could really run. He could be a running back. He could be a linebacker, a strong safety. He's just a great football player. I'm curious to see how it plays out, but he doesn't do like anything immediate. So good luck figuring that part out. We'll see.
If I'm Florida, I'm taking him down for the Kentucky game, and I'm going to say, hey, this is the game where they pummeled us on the ground last year. Linebacker play was a big whiff on it. If you can show improved linebacker play, and you go, hey, this is the coaching that you got here, and I hope he's at the Florida State game. I do, because I'm not as sold on Florida State as a lot of people. I think you're replacing a lot there. And
do I sense you're saying that Florida's going to win at Florida State?
I'm not saying they're not. I'm not saying they're not. I've always said that when we talk about projecting people to do things, more often than not, they're not going to reach those expectations. And Florida State, you got a lot of guys that are going to be taking up new roles and needed to pick up.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, until I see it, when we're here in June, I'm going to say that I don't know what I'm going to see in Florida State. They could be better than last year. They could be worse than last year. But until then, go ahead, bring them out for that game and let Florida beat the Concord champions from the 2023 season. Last linebacker to talk about is Miles Johnson. He's been an Alabama commit for a while, but for also quite a while now, it's felt like he's not going to join the Alabama Crimson Tide. They've added linebackers over him. The rumor is that they're not as interested in him, that he might not be a take anymore in this class for Alabama. It's been, I think, since March that he's been on campus there. So been quite some time. No official visit even scheduled for him. He's visited Florida a couple of times this month. He officially visited, if I'm not mistaken, it was the week of the 7th. And then a few days later, he came back to Gainesville for an unofficial visit, was there for a camp. And this past weekend, he took an official to Ole Miss. What's your feel on this one? That right now, I feel a little bad being like, oh yeah, just Alabama doesn't want him right now. But that just is what it feels like for me here.
If the kid doesn't have an OV set and he's committed to Alabama, are we sold there's a marriage there? I'm not.
I don't even know if they're dating.
Okay. Brandon's just throwing this kid under the bus here. Auburn had him for a visit. I think this is a kid that could go to a lot of spots. My guess is it goes into the fall. But again, UF, they need linebackers. Just do. It's probably not a hard sell. And if you, again, this is there's a ton of kids that are like 6'1" to 6'2", 200 to 210 pounds that can just run. This is another one of those kids. Good football player. Alabama might be missing. I'm surprised if they're – I don't know what's going on with Alabama. Whatever. Point is this. If Florida could get him, I think they would do well. They should absolutely be thrilled about it if they can. So good for them. I don't know if it's a situation he's looking for something different. Maybe he jumped the gun too early with Alabama. I need to look into that. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, and I will also say this because I know that you've said it a couple times in this segment, and I'm sure that there's Florida Gators fans sitting here stewing and cursing at you when you go, oh, Florida can use linebacker help. They've got some good guys.
I watched the Kentucky game, man.
Or maybe five. They've got Shamar James, who is NFL eligible this year. They've got Pup Howard, who's NFL eligible next year, and this year is probably going to be his first year as a starter because he didn't start for South Carolina last year. You got Aaron Childs and Miles Graham in the 2024 class. Jaden Robinson is someone that I liked in the 2023 class, but we haven't seen much of him lately. I'm just saying you're not wrong to say that they need to add linebackers. There's not much proven talent right now. There's a lot of guys
for what's going to be back in 25. Like, who is it? Shamar's going to leave. He's going to leave.
Yeah, he should. Like, I would love it if he came back, but he should go. So I just wanted to say that because I know there's going to be fans that are just throwing so many insults your way there. And I just wanted to get that off my chest before we go. But thank you so much, Brian. This is Brian Smith, Locked On's recruiting insider. Catch him every day with Locked On Seminoles. Catch him every week, sometimes 2 days in a row with Locked On Gators. I am Brandon Olsen. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free wherever you get the podcasts.